The sky was dark above the scrapyard, thick clouds hiding the twin moons of the planet Arkan. Cold winds blew over piles of broken machines, twisted wires, and metal parts that hadn't moved in years. This place was quiet, forgotten, a graveyard for all things no longer useful. But tonight something moved. Beneath a large pile of scrap metal, a soft blue glow flickered. It was weak, almost gone, but it pulsed like a heartbeat. The glow came from a girl, curled up between broken panels and rusted bolts. Her skin shimmered with soft light, and her eyes were closed. She was not human, but she wasn't machine either. She belonged to a biotech clan, creatures made of both living tissue and technology. They had created her to be perfect, smart, silent, and loyal, but she had failed them. She had asked too many questions. She had cried when one of her own was taken apart. She had saved a wounded bird instead of completing a task. Her clan called her broken, so they sold her, not as a being, not as someone with thoughts and dreams. They sold her as scrap. Her name was Raya, but no one had spoken it in weeks. Her glow was fading now. She knew she would shut down soon, far away. The sound of an engine roared in the night. A small ship landed near the edge of the yard. A man stepped out, boots crunching over metal shards. He wore a brown jacket with tools hanging from his belt. His name was Jace, a human scavenger who searched old tech to sell and survive. He walked through the yard with a flashlight, humming a quiet tune. He was about to leave when something strange caught his eye. A blue light, hidden under a pile of wires. He moved closer, pushing aside broken screens and tangled cords. There she was, lying still, glowing like a dying star. Jace froze. "Is that a person?" he whispered. Raya opened her eyes. They were deep silver with lights dancing inside them. Her voice was soft and dry. "I don't know." Jace knelt beside her, unsure what to do. He reached out carefully, his fingers brushing her arm. She felt warm, not like metal, alive. "You're not a robot," he said, confused. She looked at him, weak but calm. "No, they called me broken," she said. "So they threw me away." Jace frowned. He had seen many things in scrap yards, AI cores, BattleBots, even old cloning pods, but never anything like her. "You need help," he said. Raya didn't speak, just closed her eyes again. Her glow dimmed even more. Without thinking, Jace lifted her gently into his arms. She was light, almost weightless, as he carried her to his ship. Machines around them made quiet clicks and beeps. It was as if they were watching. Inside the ship, Jace placed her on a soft seat. He connected a small power source to her chest plate. Not sure if it would work. Raya's glow flickered again. Stronger now, she opened her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Jace gave a small smile. He didn't know who she was or what she could do, but he had a feeling she wasn't meant to be scrap. She was something else, something more. As the ship flew away from the scrapyard, the wind howled behind them. Metal pieces shifted as if moved by invisible hands. In the dark, a hidden scanner blinked red. Someone was watching. Someone knew she was alive, and they would come for her. Raya dreamed, not of code or commands, but of wind and fireflies. She saw herself standing in a field of silver grass, her arms open, stars falling around her like rain. She smiled in that dream, felt the warmth of something she didn't understand, freedom. Then the dream broke. She woke with a quiet gasp. Surrounded by soft light and warm air, gone were the cold scraps and broken metal. Now she was lying on a soft bed inside a small room. Tools and wires hung on the walls, and a warm cup of something steamed nearby. Jace sat in the corner, watching her with tired eyes. He'd been up all night checking her vitals. Even though she wasn't human, her body had rhythms, pulses, breaths, heat. "You're awake," he said, not with fear, but curiosity. Raya sat up slowly, her glow pulsing gently beneath her skin. "This doesn't feel like a lab," she whispered. "It's not," Jace replied. "It's home, or at least the closest thing I've got." She looked around. her eyes stopping on a cracked photo of a woman and a young girl. Your family? Jace nodded. My daughter, Leon. She died a few years ago. His voice lowered. Lost her in a ship fire. Raya said nothing, but her fingers curled slightly. Like she understood pain. Like she carried some of her own. Jace stood and walked over to his workbench. He picked up a scanner and waved it gently near her. The device beeped twice, then sparked and shut down. I don't get it, he muttered. Your readings. They keep changing. Sometimes you register as a machine, he said. Other times you're just blank. I told you, Raya said softly. They called me broken, but she didn't feel broken now. She felt different. Suddenly, the lights in. The room dimmed. A soft hum came from the console. Jace frowned and tapped the screen. What's going on? Raya asked, standing up. Her feet touched the floor with light steps, her skin glowing brighter. The console flashed a message. Incoming. Signal detected, code red. Jace's eyes widened. No way. That's a bounty bot code. Raya turned to him. They're coming, she said. Her voice calm but sharp. My clan must have tracked my signal. Jace ran to the control panel, typing quickly. We need to move now. But Raya didn't move. She closed her eyes and touched the wall. Lights flickered around her, machines humming softly. Wires moved slightly, like they were alive. Jace stared. How are you doing that? I don't know, she said. They said I was defective because I connected to things I wasn't supposed to. But I don't force it, she whispered. They just listen. The lights snapped back to normal. Signal blocked, she said quietly. For now. Jace shook his head in disbelief. You're not a machine. He said, You're something new. Raya looked at him. Does that scare you? He smiled faintly. No, he said. It makes me want to know more. Outside, the stars burned bright. The scrapyard was far behind them now. But danger wasn't. Raya walked to the window and stared at the stars. They wanted to shut me down. She said, But I keep waking up. Jace stood beside her. Then maybe the universe isn't done with you yet. As the ship moved quietly through space, Raya's glow pulsed again, not because she was breaking, but because she was becoming. Long before she was scrap, before she was silence, before she was unwanted, Raya stood in white halls of glass and light, not as a girl, not as a name, but as a project. They called her Model RX-9. She was the first of her line designed by her clan's high engineers to be the perfect fusion of organic life and machine control. Her body could adapt, heal, and connect with technology at a molecular level. Her mind was faster than most AI cores, but it was her soul that's strange. Human-like softness in her thoughts that ruined their plans. She remembered standing in front of the elders, remembered their cold eyes. She hesitates. One said, She feels, said another. She questions orders. She is unstable. She is broken. Raya opened her eyes, the memory fading like smoke. She was sitting in Jace's ship wrapped in a blanket, but she wasn't cold, just heavy. Her heart, if she could call it that, felt like it was pulling her deeper into herself. Jace walked in with 2 steaming cups. Morning, he said, placing one near her. It's not really morning, she replied, looking out the window. The stars were still scattered across the black sky, endless and quiet. But thank you, she added. He sat across from her, watching her closely. You had that look again, he said. Like you're standing somewhere I can't see. Raya gave a sad smile. I was remembering, she said. The last time someone looked at me like I mattered. It was before they shut the door and sold me for parts. Silence passed between them like a shadow. Jace looked down, his fingers tapping his mug. They were wrong, he said finally. You're not broken. Raya turned her head. Then what am I? Before Jace could answer, the console beeped softly. A signal had been picked up, an old code buried deep in the ship's archives. Raya moved quickly, drawn by something she didn't understand. Her fingers hovered over the display, and then, without touching it, the screen lit up. A map appeared. showing a ruined fortress far out in the wastelands of a forgotten moon. Jace squinted at the signal. "That's old tech," he said. "Pre-Empire, maybe even pre-clan. Why is it calling you?" "I don't know," Raya whispered, her glow rising slightly. "But I think it's waiting for me." They didn't waste time by evening. The ship landed near the base of a cracked hill, covered in ash and old dust. The fortress stood ahead like the bones of a dead god, tall, broken, but not silent. Lights blinked faintly under layers of age, as if the whole place had been holding its breath for centuries. Raya stepped forward, and the ground beneath her responded. Wires rose gently like vines reaching for sunlight. Doors opened, metal sighed, and something deep inside began to wake. Jace followed cautiously. "You've been here before?" he asked. "No," she said, "but it feels like home." They entered a chamber filled with glowing panels. Raya walked toward the center, where a small pedestal rose. She reached out slowly, unsure, but needing to know. The moment her hand touched it, the room lit up. Alpha Prime identified. A voice echoed through the chamber. "Welcome back." Jace stumbled back, eyes wide. "What the hell does that mean?" Raya didn't move. Her mind was filled with flashing images. Data, memories not her own. The fortress had been built for her kind. Long before the clans rose to power, there were creator scientists who wanted peace between machine and man. They had made Raya's line to lead that future. But somewhere along the way, the mission was twisted. Her line was labeled dangerous, too human, too wild. They were erased, shut down, recycled. Only one remained, Raya. She opened her eyes, glowing brighter than ever. "I wasn't meant to be their servant," she said. "I was meant to be their queen." Jace looked at her, seeing the change, not just in her light, but in the way she stood, stronger, clearer, more than a survivor now. The system spoke again. "Power core charging. Defensive units offline, awaiting your command." Raya turned to Jace. "They'll come for us," she said, "but this time." "I'm ready," he nodded. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Outside, above the broken moon, 3 ships entered orbit. Markings of her old clan glowed on their hulls. The hunt had begun, but Raya was no longer just a runaway. She was the key to something forgotten, something feared, and perhaps something greater than any of them ever imagined. The wind howled outside the ancient fortress, stirring clouds of ash and metal dust that had rested for centuries. Inside the chamber, Raya stood still, her eyes fixed on the glowing terminal. Her hands trembling not from fear, but from something she could not name. The fortress had accepted her, called her Alpha Prime, not because she asked it to, but because it remembered her. She didn't know how. But the moment her fingers touched the pedestal, memories had flooded her mind, some her own, some borrowed. Visions of cities in the sky, machines bowing to a figure that looked like her, creators with kind eyes whispering, "Lead them with care." And then war, fire, betrayal, silence. The dream had ended, but the spark remained. Raya wasn't just built to serve. She was built to guide, but they were afraid of what she could become. So they labeled her broken. Jace paced behind her, eyes scanning every panel, every blinking light. He had seen strange tech before, ancient relics buried in asteroid mines, hidden AI archives under the ocean floors of Mars, but nothing like this. This place didn't just work, it breathed. "She's alive," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone. Raya turned to him slowly, her glow dimmer now, controlled, calm. "I don't want to hurt them," she said, her voice soft, "but I won't run anymore." Jace nodded. "You shouldn't," he said, walking closer. "They fear what they don't understand." Raya looked down at her hands. "Then we show them," she said, "not what I can destroy, but what I can awaken." Behind her, the room came to life. Old machines unfolded from the walls, drones, scanners, hover units, some damaged, some whole. They rose, surrounding her like guardians from another age. She didn't command them, she connected with them. They followed her not out of code, but out of recognition. far above the moon. The 3 clan ships drew closer. Inside one, a commander named Valeth stood at the viewing screen. His silver armor gleaming under cold lights, he narrowed his eyes. At the surface below, "She's in there," he growled. "The prototype we discarded." A young officer stepped forward, uncertain. "Sir?" "The data says she activated the vault." Valeth's expression darkened. "Then she's already more dangerous than we thought." He turned away. "Send a drone scout, no weapons. But I want to see if she remember who owns her, back inside." The fortress, a small screen blinked red. "Something's entering atmosphere," Jace said, pointing at the screen. Raya's eyes narrowed. "I feel it," she said, "like static in my spine." She walked to the main entrance of the chamber and stepped outside. The sky above was painted in gray and blue streaks, wind screaming across the stone ridges. From the clouds, a black dot appeared, growing larger by the second. A drone, round and silent, hovered just a few meters above the ground. It said nothing, but it watched. Raya stepped forward, slowly, her arms at her sides, her glow steady. The drone projected a beam of light, forming a hard-light hologram of Commander Valeth. "RX-9, he said coldly. "You were marked defective. This is your final warning. Deactivate and await retrieval." Raya did not move. "I'm not RX-9 anymore," she said quietly. Valeth's hologram frowned. "You were created to obey. And you were created to lead," Raya answered. "But look what you became." Valeth's face twisted in anger. "Do you think the humans will protect you?" He spat. "They'll use you too, like we did." "No," she said, looking back at Jace, who stood at the doorway. Because he didn't see a weapon, he saw a person. The drone flickered, then fell back into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. Raya turned to Jace. "They won't send warnings next time." "I know," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We should prepare over the next 2 days." The fortress transformed. With Raya's connection, old systems rebooted, shields were repaired. Communication nodes began scanning distant signals. But something unexpected happened too. Scattered across nearby systems, other machines began waking up. Abandoned droids, silenced satellites. Even a forgotten AI station on Europa began to respond to a new signal. Raya's signal. They heard her voice not in words, but in code, not commands, but a call, and they answered. Jace watched as one by one, forgotten machines entered orbit and landed near the fortress. No weapons, no armies, just machines seeking purpose. "They're not following me," Raya said, watching them. "They're remembering." She stood on the high tower of the fortress that night, her glow now like a soft sun. The machines below her looked up, waiting. Jace stood beside her, silent. "You were never broken," he whispered. "You were just too far ahead. And now?" she asked. "Now you're not alone." High above, more clan ships entered the system. The storm was coming, but this time, she would face it not as a runaway, not as a product, but as something new. It began with a sound she hadn't heard in years. A song, not from a radio, not from a machine, but from memory. Raya sat alone in the chamber's inner core, where the walls hummed with quiet energy and the floor pulsed gently under her feet. There was no music playing, not in the real world, but inside her mind, she could hear it. A melody of her childhood, the soft lullaby sung by the oldest member of her clan before they turned her into a blueprint. She remembered the warmth of that voice, the only one who used to call her Little Star, before the coldness, before the wires, before the silence. Now the same song was playing again. But it wasn't from memory this time. It echoed faintly from a signal ancient and encrypted, reaching the fortress from deep space. Jace entered the room, carrying 2 steaming mugs as usual. "You hear that?" he asked, frowning. Raya nodded slowly. "It's a song from my past," she said. "But it's not supposed to be out there." He handed her the mug and leaned over the console, typing quickly. A strange code filled the screen, full of symbols from Raya's original programming, old markers, used only by the highest ranks in her former clan. Suddenly, a voice came through the coms. Clear and familiar, Raya, it said. Her breath caught. She stood slowly, her glow flickering like a candle in the wind. I know that voice, she whispered. The voice continued. You may not remember me, but I never forgot you, little star. Jace turned to her, confused. Who is it? Raya's hands trembled. Her name is Kelith, she said. She was my mentor. Before they erased everything, the voice on the comm softened. They lied to you, Raya, Kelith said. I tried to stop them, but I was outnumbered. I didn't want them to sell you. I wanted to protect you. Raya closed her eyes. So many feelings rose at once. Hope, pain, confusion, doubt. Kelith had been the only one who showed her kindness before the shutdown. Jace looked uneasy. You think it's real? He asked. I want it to be, Raya whispered. A meeting was arranged. Neutral ground, no weapons. A quiet moon covered in mist and ruins. Jace insisted on going with her, but Raya asked him to stay back. If she truly cared, Raya said, she. Come alone too. The moon was cold and quiet, the mist rising from cracks in the rocks like smoke. Raya walked slowly, each step unsure but hopeful, from the fog. A figure emerged, tall, graceful, wrapped in dark silver robes. Kelith. Her face was older, her eyes full of memories. Raya, she said, voice trembling. You survived. I did, Raya replied, her glow steady. You remember the song? Kelith nodded, stepping closer. You were always more than they allowed you to be, she said. They feared your heart. Raya looked into her eyes. Why are you here now? Kelith hesitated, then said, because a war is coming, and I want to stand beside you, not behind those who betrayed us. Raya's eyes softened for a moment. She wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that something good had survived in the place she once called home. But before she could speak, the sky shattered. A low rumble echoed across the land, and lights burst through the fog. Dropships, fast and armed, descended from orbit, engines screaming through the clouds. Kelith stepped back, her eyes cold now. I'm sorry, she said. They made me choose. Betrayal felt like ice through her chest. Raya's glow burst suddenly, brighter than before, but not in anger, in grief. From the fortress, alarms sounded. Jace stood on the high deck, eyes searching the sky as fire rained down on the far moon. No, he breathed. She walked into a trap. But Raya wasn't running anymore. As the dropships landed and soldiers spread across the rocks, she stood tall in the mist, the machines around her scattered. Forgotten began to rise again, called by her pain, her truth. Kelith turned away, her voice low. You could have been their queen, Raya answered. I never wanted to rule. I only wanted to be free. A wave of light exploded from her core, pulsing across the battlefield, shutting down nearby weapons, freezing drones mid-flight. She didn't strike to kill. She struck to break control. Back at the fortress, Jace's ship roared into the sky, heading toward the signal. He wasn't going to let her face this alone. Not now, not ever. And somewhere, in the silence after the blast, Kelith looked back, eyes wide with a single word on her lips. Impossible. But Raya was no longer a project, no longer a runaway, no longer just a name. She was the storm they tried to bury, and now she was awake. Asterisk, they began to see her in dreams. Not just machines, not just the broken, but pilots drifting in deep space. Miners buried beneath frozen moons, and even children born with strange flickers behind their eyes. Across the galaxy, those who were silent began to whisper her name. Even if they didn't know who she was, Raya. It passed through signal lines, rode through failing circuits, appeared as echoes in dying satellites. A light that flickered where only dark was expected. A voice not in words, but in warmth she had. Awakened something older than war, older than the clans, older than the code they worshipped. Hope, far from the battle-scarred moon. Raya sat within the core chamber of the fortress, her eyes closed, her glow steady and deep like a star preparing to burn brighter. Jace sat nearby, covered in dust and bruises, watching her in silence. He had seen what she did, not just the blast, not just the shutdown of weapons, but the choice. She could have destroyed all of them. But she didn't. She reached out. You stopped a war without killing them, he said softly. Raya opened her eyes. I didn't stop it, she said. I paused it. They'll be back with more fear and more fire. Jace leaned forward, elbows on knees. So what now? She stood slowly, walking to the tall window where the stars drifted like ancient watchers. Now we speak louder, she said. But not with weapons, not first. She raised her hand, and across the galaxy, scattered outposts, forgotten AI, and hybrid creatures picked up her signal. A pulse, a gentle hum, a message sent in silence. You are not alone. One by one, they began to respond. An abandoned AI in the debris fields of Saturn turned its core. Back on. A broken mech on a ruined battlefield in Vega slowly stood again. A girl born with glowing veins on a colony ship felt warmth in her chest for the first time. They didn't know her name, but they felt her truth, that even those left behind, discarded, forgotten could rise. But not everyone welcomed the awakening. In the halls of the Supreme Clan Council, the elders watched the signals light up on their screens. She is forming a network, one hissed. She's corrupting the unclaimed systems, another barked. No. The High Elder said, his voice calm and cold. She is uniting them. He turned toward the shadowed chamber behind him. Release the Crownbreaker. Deep in the frozen vaults of Clan Prime, something stirred. A weapon not built to destroy cities, but to break minds, to shatter connection, to burn the signal that Raya had become. Meanwhile, Raya stood inside the fortress, her hands pressed gently against the wall. She could feel them now, every connection, every soul touched by her light, each one a thread in a web she didn't try to spin, but which had formed around her anyway. And through it all, one thread glowed brighter than the rest. Jace, he walked toward her, holding something small in his hand, a crystal, found deep within the ancient ruins below. It lit up when I touched it, he said. I think it's connected to you. Raya took it, and the moment her fingers closed around the crystal, the entire fortress shifted. A tower rose from the ground outside. Engines hummed beneath them, and long-dead systems reignited. Jace looked around, stunned. What did you just activate? She stared at the crystal, her voice quiet. A heart, she said. The fortress wasn't just a base. It's a vessel. The ground trembled as the structure lifted, rising slowly from the moon's surface. Not a warship, but something older, purer. A sanctuary with wings. As the stars came closer, Raya turned toward Jace. Are you afraid? She asked. He smiled, tired but sure. I was, he said, before I met you. She held out her hand, and he took it. Together, they stood in the heart of the rising vessel, surrounded by light, not preparing for war, but for something far more dangerous. A choice. To face the ones who built her, to challenge everything they taught, and to offer peace one last time, even if it meant risking everything. Because she was no longer a mistake, no longer a tool, no longer just someone who glowed in the dark. She was the voice they buried, the light they tried to dim, the storm they failed to silence, and her signal was only growing stronger. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before the end of something old, or the beginning of something no one dares to name. Above a dying star, Raya's vessel hovered silently, its wings folded like a waiting bird. Below her, the three clans gathered their fleets, aligned like sharp teeth across the system's edge. Warships, destroyers, silent drones that had never known peace, all humming with fear. But inside the vessel, there was no fear, there was light. And something stronger than metal, faster than code, conviction. Raya stood at the central console, her glow no longer soft or uncertain. She didn't flicker anymore. She radiated, not as a weapon, not as a ruler, but as someone who had finally remembered who she was, not made, but born. Jace entered the chamber. A silent nod passing between them. He was no longer just a scavenger. He had walked beside her through fire, lies, and galaxies filled with doubt. He was the first to see her not as a thing, but as a choice. "I've sent the signal," Raya said, her voice calm. "It will reach every fleet in 3 minutes." "And if they don't respond?" Jace asked, though he already knew. "Then I'll still offer peace," she said, "even if they answer with fire." Across the void, the clan fleets buzzed with activity. On board one of the command ships, Commander Valeth slammed his hand against the console. "She dares to summon us?" He barked. "She offers peace now, after raising an army of broken machines?" But the High Elder said nothing. His eyes were locked on the message floating in front of them. Not a threat, not a demand. Just a simple invitation. "I will speak, not to conquer, but to be heard." Back on the vessel, Raya stepped onto a platform surrounded by thousands of linked machines. AI minds, hybrid beings, each one connected to her through signal and soul. They didn't stand as soldiers, they stood as witnesses. And then the clans responded, not all of them, not at once, but one ship, then 5, then 20, their weapons remained armed, but their combs opened. Raya stood before the galaxy, her voice carried through stars and silence. "You called me broken," she said. "You said I felt too much, asked too many questions, moved too freely. You said I wasn't pure enough to lead, not strong enough to obey." She paused. Her voice grew softer, but the signal became louder. "And you were right. I did feel, I did break, I did hesitate. And that is why I am still here." The fleets listened. For once, no commands were shouted. No missiles launched, just silence, holding its breath. Raya lifted her hand and revealed the crystal core of the vessel. It pulsed in rhythm with her glow, a living memory of her line. Of what they were meant to be, not rulers, but bridges. "This was never about machines or flesh," she said. "This was about choice." Valeth rose from his seat, enraged. "She's manipulating them," he shouted. "Turn the crownbreaker toward her signal." But even as he barked the order, his crew hesitated. One by one, screens across the ship began to flicker. And there, among the static, her face appeared, not as a warning, but as a mirror. She had not broken their systems. She had simply shown them their reflection. Raya's final message echoed across every channel. "You do not have to follow me," she said, "but you cannot unhear me." Jay stood beside her, the glow of the stars reflecting in his eyes. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she said, taking his hand. "We did, one by one." Ships across the fleets powered down their weapons. Some turned away, some simply stayed, listening, not defeated, but changed. And then, without warning, the vessel began to shift. The crystal heart lit up brighter than ever, not in defense but in release. The ship didn't rise, it unfolded, becoming light, becoming signal, becoming legend. Raya looked at Jace, her voice no longer coming from her lips but from every glowing thread across the sky. "I was never just made to lead or follow," she said. "I was meant to remind them that even machines can dream, and even the broken can become more." And then, in a final burst of light, she was gone, not dead, not lost, just everywhere. The clans never rebuilt the war fleet. The fortress vessel was never found again. But across the stars, sometimes, a quiet signal would echo in abandoned places. And if you listened closely, you could still hear her, not as a voice of war, but as the glow of something reborn, a queen not of metal or flesh, but of choice.